These are the 10 greatest Western films starring John Wayne, ranked from good to legendary according to the American Film Institute's comprehensive poll of 1,500 film industry professionals during classic Hollywood's golden age. The Duke created an American icon across a career spanning 37 years and 82 Western films that shaped the genre forever, transitioning from B-movie Republic Pictures productions to legendary collaborations with directors John Ford and Howard Hawks. Today's countdown draws from the AFI poll, audience ratings from IMDb and Rotten Tomatoes, critical scores, box office performance, and the lasting cultural impact each film carved into cinema history. Wayne himself picked The Searchers as his favorite role and named his son Ethan after the character, which tells you something about what's coming. Rankings blend all those data points into one definitive list of the best John Wayne movies ever made, so let's see where that masterpiece lands as we work from number 10 up to number 1. Number 10. El Dorado. A film that almost didn't get made the way it did, opens our countdown. Director Howard Hawks reunited with Wayne for their third collaboration and brought together two of Hollywood's biggest stars who could drink anyone under the table but only made one movie together. Cole Thornton, a gunfighter, teams up with his old friend Sheriff J.P. Hara, played by Robert Mitchum, to help a rancher against a land grabber. What makes this special is the chemistry between Wayne and Mitchum, and that chemistry came from a simple phone call where Hawks asked what the story was, and Mitchum said, "No story, just characters," which is exactly what they delivered. 96% on Rotten Tomatoes from critics, almost $13 million at the box office. Roger Ebert gave it 3.5 out of 4 stars and called it a tightly directed, humorous, altogether successful Western, turned out almost effortlessly. But here's something fans might not know. Screenwriter Lee Brackett was frustrated making this film because she'd written Rio Bravo for Hawks 7 years earlier, and El Dorado followed a very similar structure, and her words were, "The more we got into doing Rio Bravo over again, the sicker I got because I hate doing things over again." Hawks denied it was a remake, but the similarities jump out at you. Hawks actually made an unofficial trilogy starting with Rio Bravo in '59, continuing with El Dorado in '66, and finishing with Rio Lobo in '70. Harold Rawson came out of retirement to shoot this film at Hawks' personal request. Wayne was 59 during filming, which meant many of the running scenes were performed by legendary stuntman Yakima Canute's team, and he rode a 6-year-old Appaloosa stallion named Zip. James Caan played a young gunfighter nicknamed Mississippi who constantly quoted Edgar Allan Poe's poem El Dorado, reciting "Ride, boldly ride" at key moments throughout the story. One memorable scene shows Mitchum taking a bath, and that scene was largely Mitchum's own invention, which had crew members laughing during filming. Moments like these lift El Dorado beyond being just a Rio Bravo retread, because the warmth and humor between these aging warriors give the film its heart. Brackett's original script killed Wayne's character at the end, but that got changed. Japan saw the film premiere in December 1966, but American audiences had to wait until June 7, 1967, and the delay happened because Paramount didn't want it competing with their Steve McQueen vehicle Nevada Smith. $5.95 million in North American rentals. You can find it streaming on Netflix, AMC+, and several free platforms including Pluto TV and Plex. It's a comfortable, entertaining Western that shows why Wayne remained a draw, even as the genre was fading from theaters. Number 9. Fort Apache. Now we're getting into the heavyweight territory. Director John Ford's legendary cavalry trilogy started here, and Fort Apache stands as one of the first pro-Indian westerns ever made during the American Western cinema renaissance. March 27, 1948, brought the release of a film about Lieutenant Colonel Owen Thursday, an arrogant by-the-book officer played by Henry Fonda, who arrives at Fort Apache with his daughter Philadelphia, played by Shirley Temple. Wayne plays Captain Kirby York, an experienced frontiersman who understands and respects the Apache people, and the conflict between these two men drives the story toward a tragedy inspired by Custer's Last Stand. What makes Fort Apache a breakthrough is how it portrays Native Americans. Bosley Crowther wrote in the New York Times in 1948 that here it is not the heathen Indian who is the heavy of the piece, but a hard-bitten army colonel, blind through ignorance and a passion for revenge, which was revolutionary for its time. Cochise and his people appear with sympathy and respect, shown as victims of a corrupt Indian agent and Thursday's blind ambition. Critics gave the film a perfect 100% on Rotten Tomatoes. Monument Valley, Utah provided the location with 200 Navajo playing Apache warriors, 100 Navajo women and children, and 100 non-Indian extras, all working in temperatures that reached 115 degrees Fahrenheit during the day and 90 degrees at night. Behind the scenes, Ford rode mercilessly on John Agar, who was making his film debut and was married to Shirley Temple in real life, and Temple was actually pregnant during production. Ford called Agar Mr. Temple in front of everyone, and Wayne took Agar aside and helped him get through it, showing the mentorship that would define Wayne's later career. $700,000 under budget and 25 days under schedule, which earned $445,000 in profit for RKO, translating to about $4.5 million in today's dollars. Screenwriter Frank Nugent, making his screenwriting debut, read 50 books about the period and traveled to Arizona to study Apache culture, and historian D. Brown sent Ford and Nugent a letter in 1949 complimenting their accurate and sensitive portrayal. And if you appreciate how these classic westerns broke new ground and challenged conventions, make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the bell because we're diving deep into Hollywood history here, and you won't want to miss what's coming next. The Ford Apache set at Corriganville Movie Ranch was reused in dozens of productions including The Adventures of Rin Tin Tin, Best Director and Best Cinematography at the Locarno International Film Festival, number 11 in the AFI's Western nominees. Number 8. She Wore a Yellow Ribbon. The second film in Ford's Cavalry trilogy is also the most visually stunning, and that Academy Award for Best Cinematography has one of the best stories in Hollywood history. Captain Nathan Cutting Brittles, a cavalry officer on the verge of retirement who must complete one last mission, is who Wayne plays here. Kansas City saw the premiere on July 26, 1949, with wide release following on October 22, and Monument Valley in Technicolor provided the canvas, making it Ford's second color film and the only color entry in the Cavalry trilogy. Here's the thing that makes this film remarkable. 41 years old, Wayne was playing a 60-year-old character with 43 years of cavalry service, and Ford initially did not want John Wayne for the part. Red River from the previous year changed Ford's mind, and when shooting was completed, Ford presented Wayne with a cake reading, "You're an actor now." Wayne later felt his Best Actor nomination for Sands of Iwo Jima should have been for She Wore a Yellow Ribbon instead. $1.6 million, making it one of the most expensive westerns to date, but production finished ahead of schedule and under budget. Now about that Oscar-winning cinematography. A real thunderstorm grew on the horizon during filming, and according to Harry Carey Jr.'s on-set account, Ford asked cinematographer Winton Hawk if they could shoot it, and Hawk replied, "It's awfully dark, Jack. I'll shoot it, I just can't promise anything." Ford said, "Winnie, open her up and let's go for it. If it doesn't turn out, I'll take the rap," and Hawk replied, "Fair enough, Jack." The resulting footage was spectacular and earned Hawk the Academy Award, giving the film visual beauty compared to Frederick Remington paintings. 92% on Rotten Tomatoes from critics, 87 on Metacritic. Monument Valley meant the cast and crew lived in relatively primitive conditions with dirt floor cabins and communal cold water drum showers. Ben Johnson, in only his second major role, showed astonishing riding skills because he was a champion rodeo rider who would go on to win his own Oscar years later. "Never apologize, mister, it's a sign of weakness" became one of Wayne's most quoted lines. Captain Nathan Brittles also has a poignant exchange with the Apache chief pony that walks about being too old for war but knowing that old men should stop wars. Lejeune of The Observer UK called it one of the most rousing films I have seen for years. It is also not without subtlety, and critics at the time suggested Wayne's performance should challenge for the Academy Award. Modern critics call it the most sentimental movie John Ford ever made, and that's not necessarily a criticism because the sentimentality comes from an honest place, from Ford's deep respect for the cavalry and the men who served. Number 7. The Shootist. John Wayne's final film is a meditation on mortality, legacy, and the death of the Old West. July 21, 1976 brought The Shootist to theaters, exactly 3 years before Wayne's death from cancer. John Bernard Brooks, an aging gunfighter dying of cancer who comes to Carson City, Nevada in 1901 to die with dignity, is the character Wayne inhabits here. The parallels to Wayne's own life are impossible to ignore because Wayne had been diagnosed with lung cancer in 1964 and had his left lung and several ribs surgically removed, was declared cancer-free in '69, and when he made The Shootist in '76, he was not terminally ill. But in '79, the cancer metastasized, and June of that year took him. An American Cancer Society public service announcement featured Wayne using the scene where his character is told he has cancer, and then Wayne said he'd enacted the same scene in real life 12 years earlier. Few actors have had to confront their mortality quite so directly on screen. Director Don Siegel crafted something special here, opening the film with footage from Wayne's earlier westerns to establish Book's gunfighting past. Clips from Red River in '48, Hondo in '53, Rio Bravo in '59, and El Dorado in '67 literally create a summation of Wayne's Western film career. Paul Newman, George C. Scott, Charles Bronson, Gene Hackman, and Clint Eastwood all passed on the role before reaching Wayne. Wayne specifically requested Lauren Bacall, James Stewart, Richard Boone, and John Carradine for the supporting roles, and Stewart hadn't made a film for 5 years but agreed as a favor to Wayne, 14 years after they last worked together on The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance. Production faced challenges when Wayne's compromised lung capacity made breathing difficult at Carson City's 4,600-foot altitude. Influenza hospitalized Wayne and shut down production for a week, and Wayne also insisted on a script change because the original had books shoot a man in the back, but Wayne maintained throughout his career he never shot an adversary in the back, and would not do so now. Dollar, sometimes spelled Dollar, was Wayne's favorite horse, a sorrel quarter-horse gelding he'd ridden in Big Jake, The Cowboys, True Grit, Rooster Cogburn, Chisholm, and The Train Robbers. Wayne stipulated using this horse in his contract. $13.4 million domestically, an Academy Award nomination for Best Art Direction, and Roger Ebert ranked it number 10 on his top 10 films of 1976. The National Board of Review included it in their top 10 films, alongside Rocky, All the President's Men, and Network. I won't be wronged, I won't be insulted, and I won't be laid a hand on. I don't do these things to other people, and I require the same from them, is one of Wayne's most iconic late-career lines, a code of honor that defined Wayne's screen persona for 50 years. Few stars ever ended their career on as perfect a note as the Shootist, 141st and final film, concluding a career that began in 1926, 82 of those films being westerns. The Shootist is now considered a masterpiece alongside Clint Eastwood's Unforgiven, as among the last great westerns in cinema history, both films serving as profound meditations on violence and the mythology of the American West. Number 6. True Grit. This is the film that finally won John Wayne his Oscar after 40 years in Hollywood, when the Academy recognized what everyone already knew. Little Rock hosted the premiere on June 12, 1969. Reuben J. Rooster Cogburn, a one-eyed, whiskey-drinking U.S. Marshal hired by a 14-year-old girl named Maddie Ross to track down her father's killer, became Wayne's Oscar-winning role. R.A. County, Colorado, near Ridgeway, provided the location along with Montrose Hot Creek near Mammoth Lakes, California, and Buckskin Joe frontier town. $300,000 is what Wayne bid on the rights himself, but producer Hal B. Wallace outbid him. The role fit Wayne perfectly at 62, crusty, tough, and ultimately heroic, and Time magazine wrote in 69, by growing old disgracefully as the fat, swaggering Rooster Cogburn, Wayne proves he can act and solves his own senior citizen problem in one master stroke. $11.5 million in domestic rentals the first year, reaching approximately $27 to $30 million total domestic gross. Adjusted for inflation, that's about $160 million in 2010 dollars, and the film reached number 1 at the US box office after 11 weeks. 87% critics score on Rotten Tomatoes. But making the film wasn't easy. Elvis Presley was Wayne's choice for the role of LaBeouf, and Elvis was enthusiastic, but Colonel Tom Parker demanded too much money, so Glenn Campbell got the part instead. Mia Farrow was originally cast as Maddie Ross but backed out after Robert Mitchum warned her not to work with director Henry Hathaway, and Farrow demanded Hathaway be replaced with Roman Polanski, which Wallace refused, so Kim Darby took the role. Hathaway yelled at both Darby and Campbell on set, and Darby told Wallace she'd never work with him again. Meanwhile, Wayne reportedly chased Dennis Hopper around Paramount with a loaded gun, and Hopper hid in Glenn Campbell's dressing room. Wayne also threatened to punch Robert Duvall if he argued with the director again. But despite all this drama, the film came together beautifully. Wayne's eye patch became iconic because he insisted on seeing through it, so wardrober Luster Bayless used window screen mesh and gauze to make it see-through. "Fill your hand, you son of a bitch," delivered before Rooster's climactic charge became immortal. April 7, 1970 brought Wayne the Academy Award for Best Actor, and his acceptance speech was brief and heartfelt. "Wow, if I'd have known that I would have put that patch on 35 years earlier. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm no stranger to this podium. I've come up here and picked up these beautiful golden men before, but always for friends. One night I picked up 2, one for Admiral John Ford, one for our beloved Gary Cooper. I was very clever and witty that night, the envy of even Bob Hope. But tonight I don't feel very clever or very witty. I feel very grateful, very humble, and all thanks to many, many people. I want to thank the members of the Academy. To all you people who are watching on television, thank you for taking such a warm interest in our glorious industry. Good night." That Oscar was Wayne's only competitive Academy Award. The Coen brothers remade True Grit in 2010 with Jeff Bridges, Haley Steinfeld, and Matt Damon, and that version grossed $252.2 million worldwide and received 10 Oscar nominations but won none. John Wayne remains the only actor to win an Oscar for playing Rooster Cogburn. Number 5. Rio Bravo. Howard Hawks created Rio Bravo as a direct response to High Noon, and it became one of the most influential westerns ever made. March 18, 1959 brought the release, $10.5 million poured in, and it became the highest-grossing western of the year. Sheriff John T. Chance, played by Wayne, arrests a powerful rancher's brother for murder and must hold him in jail while waiting for the U.S. Marshal to arrive. Helping him are Dude, a recovering alcoholic played by Dean Martin, Stumpy, a crippled deputy played by Walter Brennan, and Colorado, a young gunfighter played by Ricky Nelson. Angie Dickinson plays Feathers, the love interest. Hawks and Wayne were angered by High Noon's portrayal of a sheriff begging townspeople for help, and Wayne later called High Noon un-American and said he did not regret helping run writer Carl Foreman out of the country. Rio Bravo shows a professional lawman who refuses help from well-meaning amateurs, making a statement about competence, professionalism, and self-reliance. 96% critics score on Rotten Tomatoes. Roger Ebert gave it 4 out of 4 stars and wrote, "To watch Rio Bravo is to see a master craftsman at work. The film is seamless, there is not a shot that is wrong." Dave Kerr of the Chicago Reader called it Howard Hawks' finest western and perhaps his finest film. One English critic said, "If I were asked to choose a film that would justify the existence of Hollywood, I think it would be Rio Bravo." Quentin Tarantino has said that before he enters into a relationship with a girl, he always shows her Rio Bravo, and if she doesn't like it, there is no relationship, which shows how deeply this film resonates with filmmakers and fans. Elvis Presley was Hawks' first choice for Colorado, and Elvis was enthusiastic, but Colonel Tom Parker demanded too much money and top billing. Hawks didn't want Ricky Nelson, considering him too young and too lightweight, but later admitted Nelson's name added $2 million to the box office. Dean Martin arrived early for a 9:30 a.m. audition despite a late-night Vegas show, impressing Hawks, and Martin was reportedly hungover most of the shoot but got along great with everyone. For Nelson's 18th birthday, Wayne and Martin gave him a 300-pound sack of steer manure and threw him into it. Old Tucson studios in 120-degree heat with grasshoppers that fried on the hot lights provided the setting. $1.2 million covered production costs, and the sets were built at 7/8 scale. But despite these challenges, the film feels effortless with natural chemistry between the actors and Hawks' trademark, overlapping dialogue. John Carpenter's assault on Precinct 13 in '76 was directly inspired by Rio Bravo's siege premise, and Carpenter called Dean Martin's redemption scene the greatest moment in all of cinema. Hawks remade the basic story twice more with El Dorado in '66 and Rio Lobo in '70. His final film, the National Film Registry selected Rio Bravo in 2014. It remains endlessly rewatchable, a masterclass in character-driven storytelling, where the plot takes a back seat to watching these wonderful actors interact. Time magazine wrote in '59, "Wayne, of course, walks off with the show, not by doing anything in particular, but simply by being what he is." Number 4. Stagecoach. This is where it all began. Stagecoach transformed John Wayne from a B-movie cowboy into a genuine movie star and revolutionized the Western genre forever. March 2, 1939 brought the release of a story about 9 strangers traveling by stagecoach through Apache territory. The Ringo Kid, an outlaw seeking revenge for his family's murder, is who Wayne plays, and John Ford-directed Monument Valley provided the setting in Ford's first use of that iconic location, and Walter Wanger produced for $531,000. $1.1 million came in at the box office, nearly $1 million by the end of '39, with profits of $297,690, which was the largest profit of any Walter Wanger production to that date. But the financial success was just the beginning because the film received 7 Academy Award nominations and won 2, Best Supporting Actor for Thomas Mitchell and Best Original Score. Perfect 100% on Rotten Tomatoes from critics with a 9.3 out of 10 average, 93 on Metacritic. The New York Film Critics Circle awarded John Ford Best Director, and critics call it the first adult Western that elevated the genre from B-movie filler to serious A film fare. Here's how Wayne got the role. Walter Wanger wanted Gary Cooper and Marlene Dietrich, but Ford insisted on Wayne and Claire Trevor, and when Ford asked Wayne who should play the Ringo Kid, Wayne recommended Lloyd Nolan, and Ford replied, "Hell, Duke, can't you play it?" $3,700 went to Wayne while Claire Trevor, the highest paid cast member, received $15,000. Before Stagecoach, Wayne was trapped making B-movie westerns at Republic Pictures for producer Herbert J. Yates, grinding out formulaic programmers that played as second features in double bills. Ford's film launched Wayne into the major leagues of Hollywood leading men, forever changing his career trajectory and establishing the template for his legendary screen persona. Ford was notoriously hard on Wayne during filming, calling Wayne a big oaf and dumb bastard, criticizing his line delivery, his walking, even how he washed his face. Claire Trevor recalled Ford grabbing Wayne's chin and saying, "Why are you moving your mouth so much? Don't you know you don't act with your mouth in pictures, you act with your eyes?" Despite this abuse, Wayne's introduction in the film is ridiculously epic. The camera does a dolly rush toward Wayne holding his saddle in one hand, twirling a cocked Winchester with the other, and you can pinpoint the moment where he transforms from actor to mainstream superstar. What's called the most exciting movie stunt ever designed features Yakima Canutt, playing an Apache, jumping from a galloping horse clocked at 45 miles per hour over another horse onto lead horses pulling the stagecoach. After getting shot, he dropped between the horses, caught himself on a modified tongue tie, let his back drag, then released and crossed his arms as all 6 horses in the stagecoach passed over him, and Canutt added metal bars between harness hames, keeping horses 3 feet apart for safety. When cameramen weren't sure they captured it, Canutt offered to repeat it, and Ford replied, "I'll never shoot that again, they better have it." Steven Spielberg paid homage to this stunt in Raiders of the Lost Ark in '81, and Canutt received an honorary Academy Award in '67 for creating the profession known today as stuntman. Orson Welles watched Stagecoach dozens of times before directing Citizen Kane. The National Film Registry selected the film in '95, and it ranks number 63 on AFI's 100 Years 100 Movies list, number 9 in the AFI's Western genre list. The original negative was either lost or destroyed, and Peter Bogdanovich discovered an unscreened positive print in Wayne's garage while visiting. Before Stagecoach, Wayne was a B-movie cowboy at Republic Pictures, and after it he was a major Hollywood leading man working with Ford on 21-plus films over the next 37 years. Number 3. Red River. This is the film that made John Ford exclaim, "I never knew the big son of a bitch could act." September 1948 brought the release after production delays caused by Howard Hughes suing director Howard Hawks over similarities to The Outlaw. $2.7 million covered production costs. $4.15 million in North American rentals came back, making it the third highest grossing film of '48 behind The Road to Rio and Easter Parade. Thomas Dunson, a ruthless cattle baron who starts the first cattle drive along the Chisholm Trail from Texas to Missouri, is Wayne's character. Montgomery Clift, in his film debut, plays Matthew Garth, Dunson's adopted son, who eventually rebels against his tyranny, and the conflict between these two drives the story toward a violent confrontation. Perfect 100% on Rotten Tomatoes from critics, 7.7 on IMDb. Variety wrote in '48, "A spectacle of sweeping grandeur. John Wayne has his best assignment to date, and he makes the most of it." Roger Ebert considered it one of the greatest Western films of all time, and Peter Bogdanovich called it the best epic Western ever made. Gary Cooper declined the role, feeling the ruthless character didn't suit his image, unlike his more heroic Western persona that defined films like High Noon. Cary Grant turned down the part of Cherry Valance, played by John Ireland, and the film gave Wayne the chance to play a complex, morally ambiguous character, something he'd rarely been allowed to do. Obsessed, tyrannical, and willing to hang his own men, Dunson is a darker, more nuanced performance than anything Wayne had done before. Elgin, Arizona, at the Empire Ranch primarily provided the location. A temporary camp was built for $150,000, with 75 semi-portable tent cabins, and 5 dams were built to bring the San Pedro River to flood stage for the river crossing sequences. Texas longhorn cattle had been nearly extinct for 50 years, so only a few dozen were available, supplemented by Hereford crosses. After seeing the film, John Ford started telling people, "I never knew the big son of a bitch could act," and that comment reached Wayne and validated his abilities as a dramatic actor, changing how Hollywood saw him and how he saw himself. Montgomery Clift was disappointed with the ending, calling it ludicrous because Joanne Drew settles it, and it makes the showdown between me and John Wayne a farce. Screenwriter Borden Chase and director Hawks had different visions for how to resolve the conflict, and the compromise satisfied neither Clift nor modern critics who feel the ending is the film's weakest element. But the journey is what matters. "Take 'em to Missouri, Matt," became the line selected for the Last Picture Show's final scene in '71. Hawks created solid silver belt buckles with the Dunson Red River D brand for key cast and crew. Wayne wore his buckle in El Dorado in '66, and the original was later stolen and never recovered. 2 Academy Award nominations came, Best Film Editing and Best Story. winning neither, but the National Film Registry selected it in '90, and it ranks number 5 on AFI's Greatest Westerns list. Footage from Red River appears in the Shootist opening montage and in the Last Picture Show as the final movie shown in the doomed small-town theater. Amazon Prime Video, the Criterion Channel, MGM+, Tubi, Pluto TV, and Hoopla all stream Red River. The Criterion Collection released a deluxe Blu-ray edition with a 2K restoration of both the original theatrical version and the longer pre-release version. Number 2. The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance. At number 2, we have the highest-rated John Wayne film on IMDb, with an 8.1 rating, and the film that gave us cinema's most immortal line about truth and legend. April 22, 1962 brought the release, shot in black and white at a time when most major productions used color. Director John Ford stated, "In black and white, you've got to know your job. Black and white is real photography." But cinematographer William Clothier said the real reason was Paramount cutting costs. The black and white also helped mask that Wayne at 54 and James Stewart at 53 were playing characters 30 years younger. Tom Doniphan, a rancher who's the fastest gun in the territory, is Wayne's character. Stewart plays Ransom Stoddard, an idealistic lawyer from the East who comes west to bring law and order, and Lee Marvin plays Liberty Valance, the villain terrorizing the territory. When Stoddard kills Valance in a gunfight, it makes him a hero and launches his political career. But the truth is more complicated, revealed in flashback as an elderly Stoddard returns for Doniphan's funeral. $3.2 million covered production, $8 million came back, making it the 15th highest grossing film of '62. 95% critics score on Rotten Tomatoes, and Roger Ebert called it the most pensive and thoughtful of Ford's westerns. Richard Brody of The New Yorker called it the greatest American political movie, and Sergio Leone named it his favorite John Ford film, saying it was the only film where he learned about something called pessimism. Wayne and Stewart's first film together, and Stewart received top billing on posters, but Wayne's screen card appears first in the film. Ford told Peter Bogdanovich, "Wayne actually played the lead. Jimmy Stewart had most of the sides, but Wayne was the central character." The myth of the Old West and how legends are created is what the film explores. The newspaper editor delivers the famous line, "This is the West, sir. When the legend becomes fact, print the legend," creating a meditation on truth, history, and the stories we tell ourselves about who we are. Behind the scenes, Ford resented Paramount requiring Wayne's casting, and retaliated by taunting Wayne throughout filming. Ford compared Wayne unfavorably to Woody Strode, a former NFL player, ridiculing Wayne's football career at USC, and Ford also criticized Wayne for not enlisting in World War II, because Ford was wounded at Midway, and Stewart was a decorated bomber pilot. Strode recalled, "What a miserable film to make." Despite the difficult production, the film endures as one of Ford's greatest achievements. Best Costume Design in Black and White for Edith Head brought one Academy Award nomination, and the National Film Registry selected it in 2007. Aces and Eights, the legendary Dead Man's Hand, is Liberty Valance's final poker hand. Gene Pitney recorded a song called The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance that became a number 4 hit in June '62, but it wasn't used in the film because the lyrics reveal the ending. Several memorable exchanges fill the film. Pilgrim is what Doniphan calls Stoddard throughout. The marshal played by Andy Devine says, "The jail's only got one cell, and the lock's broke and I sleep in it." And the final line is, "Nothing's too good for the man who shot Liberty Valance." Ford, at his most philosophical, questioning the mythology he helped create, appears in The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance. It's a film about the death of the Old West, the price of civilization, and what we lose when legends replace truth. Number 1. The Searchers. And here we are at number 1. The American Film Institute's number 1 greatest Western of all time, the film that influenced Star Wars, Taxi Driver, and countless modern classics, the role John Wayne called the best he ever played. May 16, 1956 brought the release of a film about Ethan Edwards, a Confederate veteran who spends years searching for his niece, kidnapped by Comanches during a raid that killed his brother's family. Obsession, racism, and the thin line between heroism and madness drive the story, and Ethan is Wayne's darkest, most complex character, a man consumed by hatred who must ultimately choose between vengeance and redemption. John Ford directed, Monument Valley provided the canvas, and Alan LeMay's novel from '54 supplied the source material. The budget isn't verified in available records, but $4.8 million in domestic rentals came in the first year. 87% critics score on Rotten Tomatoes, 94 on Metacritic, 7.8 on IMDb. The accolades are staggering. 1989 brought selection for the National Film Registry among the first 25 films chosen. Number 96 on AFI's 100 Years, 100 Movies in 98, jumping to number 12 in the 2007 10th Anniversary edition. Sight and Sound's International Critics Poll placed it number 7 Best Film of All Time in 2012, and Cahiers du Cinéma ranked it number 10 in their 100 Best Films Ever Made. Shockingly, The Searchers received 0 Academy Award nominations. Patrick Wayne, John Wayne's son who appears in the film, won a Golden Globe for Most Promising Newcomer. Cinema's influence from this film cannot be overstated. George Lucas structured Star Wars around it because the burning homestead directly inspired Luke's discovery of his aunt and uncle, and Attack of the Clones mirrors the Tusken Raider storyline. Travis Bickle in Taxi Driver was inspired by Ethan Edwards according to screenwriter Paul Schrader, and directors influenced include Martin Scorsese, Steven Spielberg, John Milius, Wim Wenders, and Sam Peckinpah. Breaking Bad creator Vince Gilligan cited it as an influence on the series finale. "That'll be the day," repeated throughout by Ethan, became the line that inspired Buddy Holly after seeing this film in Lubbock, Texas, and he wrote the song "That'll Be the Day" after hearing it. "Let's go home, Debbie" is the final line that caps one of cinema's most powerful moments. Ethan Edwards was the best character Wayne ever played, and he named his youngest son Ethan after the role. Fess Parker, TV's Davy Crockett, was Ford's first choice for Martin Pauly, but Walt Disney refused to loan him, so Jeffrey Hunter got the role. Natalie and Lana Wood, who play the older and younger Debbie, were real-life sisters. Production had its share of memorable moments. A Navajo child became seriously ill during filming, and Wayne had his personal pilot fly her to a hospital, so the Navajos honored him with the name "The Man with the Big Eagle." Actress Beulah Archuleta was found crying because she'd miss her son's wedding, and Wayne stopped production and flew her to California. The real 1836 kidnapping of Cynthia Ann Parker, mother of Comanche Chief Quanah Parker, partly inspired the film. Warner Brothers produced one of the first making-of documentaries in film history for this film. Roger Ebert called Ethan Edwards one of the most compelling characters Ford and Wayne ever created. Bosley Crowther of the New York Times called it a rip-snorting western, praising Wayne's performance as uncommonly commanding, and Jean-Luc Godard compared the ending to Odysseus reuniting with Telemachus in Homer's Odyssey. December 17, 2024 brought the recent 4K UHD remaster from the original VistaVision negative, scanned at 13K resolution, released by Warner Archive Collection as their first 4K release, and the restoration is stunning. John Ford and John Wayne at the absolute peak of their powers appear in The Searchers, a film that grows richer with each viewing, revealing new layers of complexity. Ethan Edwards is not a simple hero but a man of contradictions, brave and cowardly, noble and petty, capable of both terrible cruelty and redemptive grace, and Wayne plays him with a mixture of swagger and vulnerability, creating a character who feels genuinely dangerous but also heartbreakingly human. The famous final shot shows Ethan framed in a doorway, watching the family reunion he can never be part of, and he turns and walks away into the desert as the door closes, shutting him out of civilization. One of the most perfect endings in cinema history, capturing everything The Searchers is about: the loneliness of the outsider, the price of violence, and the impossibility of going home. This is why The Searchers sits at number 1 among the greatest westerns ever made. Not just a great western, but one of the greatest films ever made in any genre. A work of art that transcends its time and continues to speak to us today about who we are and what we're capable of, for better and worse. So there you have it, John Wayne's 10 greatest Western films, from El Dorado's easy charm to The Searchers' profound complexity, spanning 37 years from Stagecoach in '39 to The Shootist in '76, representing not just one man's career, but the evolution of American Western cinema itself during Hollywood's golden age. 7 of these 10 films are in the National Film Registry, 3 have perfect 100% Rotten Tomatoes scores, and together they won 6 Academy Awards and received dozens of nominations. But more than that, they gave us characters we'll never forget: Rooster Cogburn, Ethan Edwards, Tom Doniphan, the Ringo Kid, Sheriff John T. Chance, Captain Nathan Brittles, and J.B. Books. 82 Western films over his 50-year career, transitioning from Republic Pictures B-movies to legendary collaborations with John Ford and Howard Hawks. But these 10 show us why John Wayne became an American icon. They remind us of a time when westerns ruled the box office, when going to the movies meant watching larger-than-life heroes on horseback ride across Monument Valley. Make sure to like this video, leave a comment telling us which of these 10 is your favorite, and subscribe to the channel for more deep dives into Hollywood history. The Old West may be gone, but as long as we have these films, the Duke will always be riding tall in the saddle.